Load management, load management, load management. It seems like ever since the mid 2010, when the Spurs would just occasionally, every once in a while, rest their players, it seems like the league just started gradually developing a system in which they kind of tweak the schedule just a little bit to give players more of a rest day instead of doing 4 games in 5 nights, or I guess like 6 games in like 4 days or whatever. They started doing a scheduling where they give players a break every other day. So it's game, break, game, break, game, break, game, break. And it seems like, they did that in order to help the players rest, but that does have an effect on the time that players have to practice, because it doesn't lead to a full rest day. And Paul George did a sit down with JJ Redick, and they spoke about this because they were there for that transition where the league kind of got off the heavy load of just stacking a bunch of games at the same time versus doing now where they have the scheduling where players barely get 2 days off in a row. It's every once in a while, but it's pretty much game day, then a rest day, game day, then a rest day. And it's believed by these two guys that this is leading up to more injuries, because not only it limits how hard players can practice on the off day, it actually takes away how many full rest days they can actually have, because they don't have back-to-back days. So they don't have a day where they actually build their bodies up to prepare for the season, for the heavy load, especially during the playoffs where the games are very intense and it's leading up to more injuries. So what they're advocating is pretty much is for maybe 3 games in 4 nights followed by a 2-day rest period. But you guys check it out, and every once in a while I'll check it.
When I came in the league, and I went to a blue collar team that worked extremely hard. That was like the norm, like practicing hard. The 2 days on training camp, like that was just like that was the norm to me, and I enjoyed it and I loved it because it helped prepare me mentally. It helped prepare me physically. Like it prepared my body for what was to come in a long season. And I think now they're like teams don't really practice. We're not getting up and down. There's just it's a lost art when it comes to that hard practicing. And I think that's why there's so many injuries that's going on, because guys that have a high load day and then a completely off day and then a high load day. Back then it was you practice hard, you got a game. You practice hard, you got a game. Then you might have a day off. Then you come right back to it. So I feel like your body just built the callus and that you were prepared for a long and rough season.
Right there. Your body built up the callus because of that. And I think that's what the league is missing right now. That's why there's so many injuries. We've seen Luka, KD, a bunch of injuries happen in the month of March. And it seems like because players have a game, then a rest day, then a game, then a rest day. That rest day, a lot of teams, believe it or not, they're not practicing as hard. That practice is just pretty much a walkthrough, and it's pretty much, maybe for some teams, it might be a travel day. But their body over the course of that 82-game season does not have the ability to build up calluses. And I believe the people that made the scheduling, they're thinking of a rest day sort of like in a regular everyday person, not for an athlete. That might not be good, that every other day off schedule. It might not actually be as good when it comes to athletes. But for regular everyday person that's not an athlete, that day off would make sense. But Paul George, the way he's explaining it with building up the calluses, it seems like that may be one of the key issues that we're seeing all these injuries happen. Is that's sort of leading up to that issue.
To where injuries, there wasn't that many injuries. There wasn't time to take a load off because you felt good to play. You know what I mean? And I think now it's just it's tough. It's tough because it's almost the reverse. They think by giving us time off, it's helped managing our bodies, but in honesty, I think it's just making us weaker.
Yeah, I believe it is making them weaker. And also the league is sort of trying to play like this little middle ground area where they're trying to make sure that their stars are available for certain games or enough games to keep the fans going into the arenas and also to satisfy their TV partners.
Without putting that load and strain to our bodies.
And by new schedule, I mean, maybe it was 18, maybe it was 19, but somewhere around that time period, there was an emphasis with the scheduling around eliminating as many 4 and 5 nights, which I don't even know if they exist anymore, eliminating 5 and 7 nights, eliminating 3 and 4 nights. And
those are the calluses nights right there. Those are the games that the players are building up their bodies to get ready for that heavy workload leading up to the playoffs. Because once that intensity in the playoffs build up night after night, these guys got to be ready for it. And I believe that's why we're seeing all these injuries happen, particularly during playoff time.
On paper, I think it sounds great. I really do. I like that idea. The problem is, prior to them changing that, you would play 5 and 7, and maybe you finish on a Monday. You probably wouldn't play again till Friday. There was time to recover from nagging injuries.
And also, you've seen less injuries happen in that time span.
Remember with Doc, Doc was great about giving us days off when we needed them. And we would have a Monday game in LA and not play again till Saturday, let's say. And he'd say, I'll see you guys Thursday. And we would go in knowing Thursday and Friday are going to be hard practices. But now I get a little break here to recover. And you go in the gym, maybe you do your maintenance work, maybe you do your training table work, maybe you get your shots. But there was time. And now with the current schedule, it feels like it's game, day off, game, day off. There's no long breaks during the season where you have multiple days. I can't remember if it was T. Lou, but I know it was one of the coaches over this weekend. They said to me, they're like, we haven't had a 2-day break between games in over 7 weeks. All-Star aside, it was back to like December before there was a 2-day break between games. Do you sense that sort of lack of longer time between games?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's tough on our schedules because we just recently, like last month, I think is when we first started getting 2-day breaks in between going into the All-Star break. But before then, we were every other day, if not a back-to-back. And like it's no, like I don't want to say it's Clippers' fault or like I'm not saying that T. Lou doesn't practice us, but it is hard based off of our schedule of playing every other day to get good practice days in on that note, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just the way the schedule is. Like they made it not so many games in a week span, but we're still every other day, which is, I almost would do more games in the front and then get a little break, because those breaks, like as much as it is physically, it's a good mental to get away from the game for like 2 days and then come back, and know, all right, now we got another stretch. And that was the way we looked at it as in Indiana. Like, all right, let's win this 5 out of 7. We got 2 days to recoup. And then let's target this next week. Let's target this, 4 out of 6 this week. You know what I mean? And it's a different game, man. We're adjusting to it and we're trying to figure it out. But I think it is a different game from what we used to play.
And also the league, in a way, they're almost doing the scheduling inverse. Now we see during the playoffs, especially during the first round, sometimes I'm pretty surprised. There's such a gap between game 1 or game 2 going into game 3. It's like sometimes a 2 to 3 day gap. They apply the 2 to 3 day gap in the playoffs, which is too long because sometimes fans are no longer interested. We see game 1 on a Monday and game 2 is not till Thursday. So sometimes it should be that day off, then the game 2 should be Wednesday. But sometimes we're seeing the playoff series get extended a little bit too long. And that started back in, I believe, 2016. After the 2015 finals, maybe LeBron James has some input on that, where the league went to like a longer rest day in the playoffs and in the finals. But it seems like the players need that type of rest day in the regular season, which it helps them kind of build up a calluses. If they have a hard schedule, then maybe a day off or 2 days off, so they can have a hard practice day, then a full day off, and then a bunch of games loaded up again. Then the same thing, repeat, wash, rinse, and repeat. And it helps the players actually build up, like Paul George said, a calluses where their bodies are ready now for the grind, especially during the grind in the playoffs, where these games are high intensity games. And that's where we tend to see most of the injuries happen in the past few seasons. Once again, the league is sort of playing this nice little dance between making sure the stars show up to these games to keep fans engaged to come into the arena, and also to satisfy their TV partners like TNT, ESPN, to also make sure that the star players are available for these nationally televised games. And I'm wondering also if AAU, the culture of the players in the, I would say, I don't want to say Chitlin circuit, but like in the little leagues coming up before they get into college, or even before they get to the G League, that little AAU circuit, I'm wondering if the heavy focus on the kids playing a bunch of games every weekend is also leading up to these injuries. But these discussions are very interesting to talk about. I'm wondering if Adam Silver is looking at his analytics going into the next CBA to make any adjustments. As he loves to talk about all the time, we're looking at the analytics. So we'll see how this plays out.